24, driving business.
Good to have you again, and welcome aboard to the Policon, where we discuss politics and economics. This is Smart 24 Television, and we are glad you're still glued onto this channel as we continue to give you everything business. I'm Joram Paul Songo, your host, and to take you through all the various conversations that we are likely to have today, and of course seeing how much they impact you, especially the youth in the country. This is a conversation that you would wish to watch and of course build on your own opinions wherever you are. The channel is 320 on GoTV and 372 on DSTV for those who want to get us via mainstream, and also on free-to-air decoders, Smart 24 Television. And of our discussion this week, though, is rotating around how the legislative arm can definitely support the youth achieving, or the youth to achieve social and economic development. As we may all know, the young people or the youth do make up the largest majority of the population currently, not only in Uganda but in Africa. So entirely everywhere you go, the discussions are around how the youth can engage in activations, or how the youth can engage in conversations that will spur economic development, for they are the leaders of tomorrow, as we normally say. And joining us on set to discuss more of this, we do have Honorable Edison Rugumayo, Youth MP, Western Region. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Jerome, and the entire management of Smart 24 channel for inviting me and according me on behalf of the many young people a great opportunity to discuss what is happening in the country and how we can shape the future of our country. Thank you very much.
All right, and of course, many thanks for joining us here. The question here is the young people. As we continue to evolve or to involve them in discussions, it has always been a very huge problem to get them into the bigger spaces. For example, when you go to the private sector, they've just started, appreciating the fact that the young people can actually do a thing. Looking at the payment structure, the young person is normally paid less because of the fact that a company will ideally mention experience somewhere. Where does this leave the employment sector, where the young people want to break even, but they cannot break into?
Well, first to note is, as a country, Uganda is, when you compare with the sister countries in East Africa, we have taken greater strides in ensuring that we are creating the spaces for the young people. I think we have scored much highly in terms of representation, in terms of programming, and all the sort. But of course, there remains a very big gap to cover, especially in the aspects of the economics. And these are the focus areas for this particular parliament, the 11th parliament. Well, like you mentioned, there is still a very big mentality in our country, but I think which is founded on the African culture, that when you're young, you have a lot more to learn, and therefore the older are wiser, which is often and sometimes very untrue. The young people of today, given the different technological changes that we are getting, especially the 5th industrial revolution, you'll find the young people are more adaptive, they are more dynamic, more productive, they even present high productivity, and therefore it is work in progress. It has to be sustained advocacy, sustained work in changing the mentality of employers, changing the mentality of all the players in the economy, to understand that actually a younger population gives a greater advantage. As you've seen several times, there are themes of harnessing the demographic dividend.
Yeah.
And when we shape our minds and understand that young is the way to go, then we shall reap much more from the young population. It is true, but most jobs today, they will ask experience, yeah, which is necessary. But then it is possible that one can still attain the experience that is usual, because usually the experience is 2 years, 3 years on some of the lower cadre jobs, 2 to 3 years. That is still achievable when someone is still young. However, on a broader note, the reality is the private sector today, as you can say, whereas there are bigger players in the private sector, the young people are leading in the small and medium scale enterprises. As you will have noted, by 2018, actually 2016, Uganda was being rated as the most entrepreneurial country in the world. And this was not because there were some people who were shifting big monies from their jobs and starting up industries. No. The entrepreneurial rating we had was because there were many young people willing to get out of their comfort zones and start a small enterprise to help them survive. So you can really say that they are contributing a lot.
Okay. Now, when you look at the growth of the economy itself, I think it is more youth-driven in kinds of the job market, and then also in terms of the available, platforms. They feed directly into what the youth want to have. When you look at the high levels of, let's say, unemployment, it's still with the youth. The issue of unemployment, among some young people do believe that they are not given as much attention as the old are given. Now, this brings me to a question of understanding how the legislative arm, let's say Parliament, for example, where we have the good thing now, the Parliament has got some good youth in there representing different constituencies and counties. How are we going to champion? How are you policymakers going to champion discussions where the youth can table their grievances and are directly worked upon without passing directly through an elder individual in society?
Well, on the last part, there cannot be youth without the elders, and there cannot be the elders without the youth. So it is all together enjoined, and we all need each other. The process of negating the old is it takes a lot of time, but in our current parliament, some of the key things that I think the youth should be excited about are the developments that are going to come. For example, this June alone that is coming, government has committed, and through PPDA, they are going to start a very, very wonderful thing, which of course was birthed by the parliament. What will be happening after June is that they are going to start implementing what we call reservation and preference schemes for young people. As you must be aware, and our viewers, a lot of our budget, a bigger portion of our budget is spent in procurement. Now, the 10th Parliament amended the Procurement Act of 2003 and emphasized some key aspects. For example, in the 2003 Act, the procurement of public assets and their disposal, they put Section 50, which was very important. Said, for example, they provided for preference schemes, they provided for reservation schemes. Now, the 10th Parliament again went ahead and emphasized why these were very important for the country. Now, this Parliament we have pushed, and this is going to be implemented starting June. What will be happening is that if there is any business that government is doing, there should be a portion that goes specifically to the young people. And we have been in a process of consultations and supporting, for example, the PPDA and Ministry of Finance, saying, for example, all businesses in government wings, every business that is 15 million and below automatically should never go to any elder person. That should go to the young person. There are also particular fields that we are setting out and saying, for example, creation of any e-platforms of government and managing them. That should automatically go to a youth-led enterprise. We are looking at some unique works. For example, if we said, you've moved along roads and we have road gangs working That should be a job for the young people. A company which is at least 80% youth-led should be the one that takes up the job. You've seen our government is still paper-led. It's not as smart TV is.
Okay.
So they still depend on stationery, paper, and what. And we are saying these jobs of procuring this stationery, these should be gazetted for the young people. And many areas which we are discussing to set out. And I believe the PPDA has the capacity, the Minister of Finance has capacity, and government entirely has capacity to implement this. So what they will be doing is creating a database, and all the youth across the country who are strategically positioning themselves could start now by going to register a company, incorporate one, and make sure they meet all the requirements for procurement, which, by the way, are a bit softened for the young people to participate. Okay. So I envision that by July
this year, okay,
young people will be able to work, and then they can bid for a government job with the confidence that this job is coming to them. And now, as Dr. Miles Monroe has said, one of the most strategic ways of creating wealth is by trading with government. Now, in as far as bringing the youth into the economy, this is going to be a very big shift forward for a young person to set up an enterprise, go and bid, and be assured that this job will go to them. That is a very big milestone as a country. And I can't wait for June when this starts. It will be very exciting to see young people create wealth.
Let's look at the education part of it. The young people are highly running away from education. And I think this has been brought about the fact that the current world setting, not only in Uganda, globally, is that education seems to be losing its value it had 10 years ago, simply because now companies are hiring more skills than qualifications. So if you have the skills to operate anything, the chances are high you can get it. You can get a job regardless of the others. Now, this has undermined the love most of the young people had for school, and at the same time undermining the value of our curriculum. But looking at the issue to do with supporting youth skill up, as the government, what should be done really to ensure that the entire country has all these young people venturing into youth skill up programs and of course benefiting from all these other programs that the government has been setting up for the youth?
You see, what actually is perturbing is the perception that we as a country have always had about education.
Okay.
For example, the job ratio in all economies since the start of the fourth industrial revolution has always been 1 to 2 to 7. Now, for one job that requires, let's say, a master's degree or a bachelor's degree,
okay,
you need, for one job that requires a master's degree, it will go with 2 jobs that require a bachelor's degree. But we'll go with 7 jobs that require at least a diploma, a certificate, or someone who is skilled. The ratio has been so since 1880s, 1820s, and the ratio will be the same in the future. Even 2050 will be the same. It will not change. But what was wrong with our country is, one, you must appreciate that the education we have was an establishment of the colonial powers. Now, their focus was majorly to produce clerical workers, administrators, front desk services, secretarial work. All this is what they focused on. And they set up an education. And they left the skilling aspect of the education for the very underprivileged, because they thought those ones were not yet needed, because Uganda was not yet an industrial country. So it's now that we are waking up and Uganda is shifting into industry that we are realizing, oh, it was not about swinging the certificate you get from a tertiary institution that will get you a job, but actually the skill that you have. And I'm glad that the country is waking to this reality. Now, those that have already attained their papers, their degrees, what I would encourage them is to go back, to sacrifice and go back and get a skill, because that is very much important. Now, what is government doing? Of course, almost creating this change of ensuring that there is a very big shift on the education to focus only on TVET, the vocational training, is what we need to work so hard, because most of the people, the current technical people, the players, and the perception in our community is that the right education is the one of the degree and the one, and yet the most right thing to do is to get a skill. So what interventions is government doing? One, I appreciate His Excellency the President has had a foresight. He saw this, and I think 10 years ago, or around 7 years ago, he started what you know as the Presidential Industrial Skilling Hubs. Now, these started in around the central region, only in Kampala. But with the demand that went on, now these are all across the country. We have at least 19 industrial skilling, youth skilling hubs. But these are not enough as well, because the demand for the skill is going to hit highs, especially now when we produce the oil and all that. And the effort that the government has put into industrializing clearly shows that there's going to be a high need for demand, the demand for a skill. So what actually where we need to be putting our effort more is ensuring that there is more funding for the TVET sector. The amount of incentives that government is putting into, you've heard, you know that today many students get access to the Makerere institutions, Chambogos, and all other universities on government scholarships. Government pays the tuition and again pays a stipend to a child to study a degree. Sometimes even journalism, social sciences, and all these, they are paying a stipend. And I think that is putting incentives in the wrong place. What government needs to be doing now is slicing down these incentives at this level and pushing them towards the TVET sector and saying, hello, we need more of the skilled people. Getting many young people who have done O-level or A-level and sending them to the UTCs, the technical colleges, and then giving as much incentive as possible. Pay the tuition, pay the accommodation, and give them an incentive so that they can appreciate and study that. And if we don't shift these incentives there, surely the sector is going to remain behind. Okay. Now, there are also other initiatives like UPET, where you find, especially for the kids that dropped out of school after completing P7, the government has been saying you can do at least an equivalent of DIT assessment and graduate with an equivalent of an O-level and A-level. So they have been doing this, but there is need for more emphasis on that, because actually for every 100% of our students that join primary level, you find only 45 sitting PLOE. And for those that join, for the 5 that join secondary, you find only 15 is finishing O-level. And it goes on reducing, and that is a worrying number. But I think this demography, the young people can be harnessed best if they are skilled. So I think that should be our next focus now. And again, the government is aware of this. They have gone on to categorize young people specifically. They will say, we are aware that there are youth who are uneducated, there are youth who have the skill, there are youth who are overly qualified with degrees. But which is the most profitable group of young people? It is the youth with the skill. Okay. If you moved out now and went to all metal fabrication centers, all to carpentry workshops, all the best salons you're seeing around, to mention but a few, all these are run by young people who have the skill. The question is, where is the young person who went to Makerere institution and has a bachelor's degree? If they not go back and get that skill, they cannot benefit as this young person is getting. So I think we are shooting in the right direction, but there is need for more effort.
Okay. Yeah. And now this brings me to a question of understanding the youth involvement in ICT. When you look at the ICT, government has been pushing in and investing heavily, by the way. There is also an innovation hub that was set up in Nakawa. All this is to enhance innovation amongst the young people, the youth, and of course create awareness that, well, these platforms are available for them to at least develop skills, grow together, evolve and everything.
Well, I think for ICT really, it has not been an emphasis of government, and that one I have cried and I've told them. Okay. This is an area you've neglected so much.
So I was just giving them even so you mean I was
No,
just
you're
giving
crediting
flour,
them, and
crediting
this
them
is
for-
where they have really played a deaf ear,
Okay.
and it is going to cost them.
Okay.
It is going to cost us as a country, because the country has missed already out. We missed the fourth industrial revolution.
Okay.
We missed several other revolutions. Now, in the fifth industrialization, industrial level is where we are laying back, and we are not strategically positioning ourselves. Our sister countries are doing much wonderful work. They are getting innovators, putting them in incubation centers. They are making sure they are setting up all the necessary environment for someone who has their money in the US to help support an initiative in Uganda. But we are not putting much emphasis there. And I think that gives the reason as to why we are, as Parliament, we are pushing for a startup bill, which I think will be ready, and we shall be tabling soon.
Okay.
We are really saying that government is laying back, and we're going to miss out a lot. And we're not ready, because as a young population, we're not ready to lose out on this revolution. So on the ICT sector, I really have to say we are lagging behind. Uganda has almost the most expensive internet globally.
True.
We are ranked 116th out of 117 countries to have the most expensive internet, both mobile and broadband. And this is not something we can laugh about. It is terrible. If you can see the stringent measures and the whips that we have put on tech companies, and it hasn't really provided a good foundation for tech. And yet countries are positioning themselves to become IT champions. So I think in that sector we are laying back. And
Okay.
you can clearly see that we need to convince the head of state to...
This gets me thinking of how then should the youth get themselves assistance, because if government is still failing for the moment and the youth need to step up, so are we turning our eyes to NGOs this time around, the private sector?
Definitely the NGOs would not solve, but we continue. We have to continue, and I have to speak to government. We are speaking to government, and that's why we are bringing the startup bill. We need to do a lot of work in that sector. We need to do, it is our job. We are doing the state building. It is our job. We need to continue talking, because the fundamentals really only the government can best do. So we have no alternative but to push government to do that. Yes, and they must listen if we are to tap into the fifth industrial revolution.
Okay. A quick one before we go into the break here. We are heading to the national budget a month, whereby we're heading into a new financial year. That is the best way I can put it. As we're heading into the next financial year, 2023-2024, youth discussions among, when it comes to, I think when it comes to the budget itself, when they're laying out the budget framework paper, it does seem like the youth involvement is still less at this budget, at the budget preparation stage. Why is that so?
No, that cannot be true, because the one is that the youth have representatives.
Okay.
The 5 representatives.
Yes, in Parliament.
Just
You're one of them.
But also, if you look at the average age of all the members of Parliament today, most of them are youthful. So I think it would be bad to think that the youth are missing out. And again, also, the government is a very big thing. So, for example, if it is a budgeting cycle, MPs participate at committee level.
Okay.
They make input at committee level. You cannot definitely sit in every committee of government and push for an agenda. But we bank on the several MPs of shared mind that this is a strategic direction we are taking. So I do not think that the youth voice in the budgeting process has been muzzled or it's low. No.
Okay.
It's been there. We push for whatever we push through committee level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well, for the viewers out there, as we're heading into the break, the quick text from this first part of the conversation may clearly be rotating around one. As the legislators, they are pushing hard to ensure that the government invests more in the ICT sector, especially involving the young people who are eager to adapt to the new era of technology and advancement. Not only that, also the issue to do with mindset change in regards to education and skill up another big concern. Our topic of discussion is still rotating around how the legislative arm can achieve or can help the young people achieve social and economic development in a world that looks to be more challenging lately, in the world which seems to be having fewer jobs for most of them. When we do return, we return with more conversations here on the Policon. Stick around.
Smart 24, driving